In the text studied, characters emphasize the dangers involved in desiring to become someone that they are incapable of becoming both emotionally and physically, with a consideration for their damaged personal histories. The characters symbolize the emotional misery that comes along to their irrational, devoted dedication to their conception of happiness. So the characters I'm going to be analyzing are Charlie Sisters from the Sisters Brothers, Blanche Dubois from the Streetcar Named Desire, and Anne from the Painted Door. So the three characters from each text are on a pursuit to fill an empty void in their hearts, which ultimately takes a toll on them emotionally. Their endeavors create much distress for them and ultimately lead them in an attempt to compensate for this. In the Streetcar Named Desire, Blanche Dubois uses alcoholism as an attempt to compensate for the death of her husband. So we see the significance of her alcohol problem when she first arrives at the Kowalski home, and the stage directions state that she springs up and crosses to it and removes a whiskey bottle. She pours a half a tumbler of whiskey and tosses it down. She carefully replaced the bottle and washed out the tumbler at the sink. So from this, we see that Blanche is a woman that is terribly destroyed from the event of her husband killing himself, and she uses alcohol as a way to suppress her emotions and forget about the incident. She believes that she will never be capable of finding true love and happiness and satisfaction with her life until she forgets about the incident of her husband killing himself. Um, Blanche's pursuit to maybe one day feel a genuine sense of security and happiness is ultimately stopped by her alcohol consumption and her inability to let herself heal properly. So ultimately, her compensation destroyed her in the end. So Charlie Sisters from the Sisters Brothers is a ruthless killer that uses murder as a method to empower himself in order to feel worthy. Charlie is strong in the ability to kill from the dangerous lack of empathy and emotion he has. After Charlie and his brother Eli were cursed by the witch, Charlie left the cabin to acquire tools from him and his brother. On the road, he found four prospectors, and he chose to brutally murder them because it was the easier way to deal with the situation. Now, this wasn't the first time Charlie ever murdered someone, but this was the first time that the reader got a true sense of how dangerous his personality and nature were. Charlie is most definitely a lonely person that feels empty inside and out, and for that reason alone, he attempts to attain power through the taking of lives. Murder takes a toll on Charlie though every time he commits it, and his compensation for the damage it does to his soul is the continuing of murder, in order to feel a certain way that he wasn't able to feel with normal human emotions such as love or happiness. Charlie is a menace whose only chance of ever feeling happy are through murder, ultimately corrupting his soul. Anne, on the other hand, is a dissatisfied housewife that is longing to find the satisfaction that she desires in her life. So in the Painted Door, Anne sleeps with Stephen during the snowstorm while her husband was presumed to be still helping his father. And this was a way for Anne to compensate for the missing love and emotion that she has in her life with her husband. Um, Anne being with her husband has corroded her ability to make rational and logical decisions because it is at this point in her life that the only thing she is searching for is genuine love, and she believes that she will not find it. So her compensation was sleeping with Stephen because she thought that he had what she was missing in her life, which ultimately ended up ruining her chances of actually finding true love. The characters examined in these texts have significantly damaged background histories too, that create emotional barriers between them and the possibility for happiness. In the Streetcar Named Desire, Blanche is an individual with a significant trauma hidden under her facade of an elegant, stable woman. So this trauma was the suicide of her husband, Alan. So this created a huge, significant issue for Blanche because when he killed himself outside of the bowling alley after she shamed him for being a homosexual, that was the moment that Blanche um, perfectly correlated the idea of love and a marriage with a tragic ending. So it is at this point that Blanche only understands love ending in terrible tragedy. This causes Blanche to do things that she wouldn't do if she was emotionally stable. However, too, this event was also the root cause of Blanche's alcoholism, which plays an important role in her emotional instability. It goes hand in hand with the death of her husband. So her alcoholism and the suicide of her husband both coincide with one another to make her an extremely emotionally unstable person. Blanche is scared to allow herself to love another person out of fear that it will come to a tragic end, like her previous one, and for that reason, Blanche is unable to let herself feel secure with another person, ultimately creating an emotional barrier between her and a happy life. And for Charlie from the Sisters Brothers, he experiences one of the most traumatic events possible that an individual can experience, and that was him having to murder his own father. This event is irrefutably the event that led to the exponential deterioration of his soul. Charlie developed a fixation to murder at a very early stage because of this, and he inevitably saw murder as a solution rather than an evil deed, like a normal human being would. Killing his father shaped Charlie into the killer that he was, consequently, and his ability to reluctantly take another person's life only distances himself further from emotionally connecting with another person. So the death of his father created a huge problem for Charlie, made him unable to connect with people, and therefore that was the barrier that stood between him and a happy life. Anne has experienced a more unconventional damaging event to her nature, which was an unfulfilling marriage on its own. At the beginning of the short story, Anne describes her husband as a very average, unambitious man that John is, and a woman like Anne, someone that surely feels that she's too good for her husband John, to have her live an isolated, uneventful life definitely makes her feel worthless. To have Anne living in her life with a man that she is supposed to be happily married to, yet is extremely unsatisfied with, creates a huge barrier with her, because if she's already in a marriage with someone that she thought she loved and she thought she could be happy with, yet is clearly incapable of doing so, she believes that she will never be able to find that with anyone, and therefore she acts out irrationally and does things that she wouldn't do if she only opened her eyes and saw what was right in front of her. The characters in these texts are also on a quest for satisfaction in their lives that they so desperately desire, but ultimately fail as a result of their unreasonable devotion to attaining this satisfaction. Blanche is devoted to obtaining acceptance from the people in New Orleans. When Blanche first comes to the Kowalski's home and is having a drink with Stanley, we see her craving for acceptance when he offers her another drink, and she says, "No, one's my limit." Even though before Stanley met her, Blanche immediately goes to the alcohol and drinks from it without anyone knowing. She's clearly an alcoholic, and she craves acceptance by manipulating and deceiving the people around her. She doesn't let her alcoholism be evident to the people because she craves the attention of those people, because she's trying to start a new life, and she's scared that her life is going to turn out the way it was back in her hometown. So therefore she lies and deceives as a way to set herself up for success in her new life. Her irrational devotion to doing this is because she desperately craves acceptance, and it is Blanche's way of feeling more secure with herself, since she believes that she's incapable of ever finding happiness through love again. So for Charlie Sisters, he is another individual that is incapable of ever finding happiness through love, and therefore his craving is for power. Charlie does not require love to feel satisfaction in life, and for that reason he only gets satisfaction through power. His brutal murders and violent behavior empower Charlie in a way that he could never feel through love with a woman, for example. Charlie's experience with the Commodore was a clear indication of how necessary it is in his life to feel powerful. When they were at the Commodore's house and he would not tell Charlie where the safe was, Charlie beat him over the head and with the butt of his gun, hurting him severely, and manipulated him into telling him where the safe was. Charlie didn't need the money, nor did he need to beat the Commodore, but he did it for a sense of power. So this event emphasized Charlie's dire need for empowerment over others, making it clear to the reader that he is a lonely individual that will only ever feel any worth when he is overpowering someone. The quest, however, ultimately leads to his own tragic ending with the severing of his shooting hand, signifying the dangers involved in his unconditional devotion to murder and brutality. Charlie was incapable of being the powerful murderer that he aspired to be his whole life, and therefore he slowly deteriorated over time because of this. So when the severing of Charlie's hand took him out of the killing business forever, he realized that he would no longer have the satisfaction he craved in life, and as a result his attitude and personality changed forever. He may have been in a comfortable situation with his mom and his brother, but he will never truly be satisfied. So his irrational devotion inevitably led him to the failure of him ever being satisfied in life. For Anne in the Painted Door, her irrational and dire need for love led to the death of her dream of finding what she wanted in life. When Stephen was at Anne's house with her, they participated in both casual and semi-intimate flirting, which emphasized how far Anne was truly willing to go to achieve her goal of finding love. Anne was willing to flirt with one of her husband's friends in the attempt of potentially finding the happiness that she was incapable of finding with her husband, and she was so blinded by her quest for love that she believed there was no possible other way of doing it. And the inevitable failure and tragic ending that came from this was the literal death of her husband from him finding out that they slept together. So after Stephen and Anne slept together, she realized that her husband John was the one that she loved and wanted. But because she was unable to wake up and see what was right in front of her and see John for what it was, her situation for what it was, then it led to the inevitable end of her husband dying and her chance of ever possibly finding love again. potentially her only chance ever. So, in conclusion, the characters Charlie's sisters, Blanche Dubois, and Anne all exhibit failures in achieving their desires in life as a result of their irrational devotion to what they conceive to be happiness. They are all damaged individuals from their personal experiences, and as a result, cause them to be unable to achieve genuine happiness from the emotional barrier that this creates for them.